Genesis 1:29. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Psalm 78:25. Everyday Manna with Lisa.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Everyday Manna. Today we are going to make a southern vegetable plate. We have lots of vegetables. You know, and in the South, it is very, very common for people to order a vegetable plate. And I love the summer vegetables. So we're going to get started on that. It cooks very, very quickly. To serve with our veggies, we're going to make a wonderful bread. Just a quick and easy bread using a French loaf. Now I'm just going to use half of it because it was really big. I have in here some softened butter. And then I'm going to add some herbs to it. Now I have some wonderful Greek oregano. I like to put it in my hand and kind of crush it just a little bit, or you could do it in a mortar and pestle. Oh, it smells so good. Then I'm going to add a little bit of dill. I'm adding about a teaspoon of each one. This is a brand new container of it. Let me get it opened. Hold on, I should have done this ahead of time, but I didn't. So let's get this done. I never keep the little sifters on my herbs because I typically always just measure mine out. So I just throw that thing away. I'm going to add about a teaspoon of dill weed, not seed. If you have fresh dill, by all means add fresh dill. Some dried basil, which is not, this one's new too, not something I typically use a lot of. I, for the most part, don't use dried basil, but there are some things like this that it really does go well in. And be sure that you keep your herbs fresh. See, that smells so good. If you've had a container of herbs for a year, it's probably not going to be any good. So you want to make sure that you have fresh herbs. They only keep about 6 months. Now this is rosemary that I have grown myself and dried. So I want to crush it up just a little bit. All right. And then just stir that all together. Let me get my herbs out of my way here. Put them back here. We're just going to mix that together, and oh, you can smell that oregano. If you ever have the opportunity to shop in a Greek-inspired or a Greek grocer, get their oregano. The dried oregano in a Greek is just fabulous. I'm going to add a little lemon to this. I'm going to zest it first because I want to add that flavor of the lemon rind, which is the outer part, the yellow only. Don't go into the white. That can be bitter. And oh, instantly you smell that flavor of the oils coming out of that zest. It has so much flavor. I'm just using a rasp. If you don't have a rasp, you can use the small holes of a box grater. Worth the investment though. I have different sizes of these, different kinds of holes. But this one's just the traditional one. And I zested pretty much that whole lemon. Take your rasp and just kind of tap it and get the rest of the zest off. Okay, I'm going to add that to my butter. And then I'm going to add the juice of this lemon. Always run it on your board, press it down to release the juices. Depending on how juicy it is. I don't know whether I'm going to need the whole lemon or just half. I want about a tablespoon or so, and I think just half is going to be plenty because that was pretty juicy. You do release the oil, the juices by rolling it onto your cutting board and pressing down on it. Now I want to take my bread and I'm going to cut it in half. Get all my stuff off my work surface here. You could cut it in individual little pieces, but not through the bottom to keep it all intact if you want. But I find it's just as easy to do it this way. And then mix all that together. And you can add, if you don't have Maybe you don't have all the herbs that I used. Use what you like. This is totally customizable. And I'm gonna put that on my bread. I've got my oven preheating. I'm just gonna kind of stir that all together. I love anything lemon. Okay. Stir that together. And then put the top on. Wrap it in foil. And put it in the oven for about 15 minutes or so until the bread warms and the butter melts. And oh, it's so delicious. So we're just gonna pop this in the oven back here at 350 degrees, 10 minutes or so. It doesn't have to be exact, it's fine. Whatever temperature you wanna bake it at is fine. Now, in the summertime, we are lucky and blessed to be able to have good fresh produce. One of my favorite things in the world is fresh corn on the cob. This just so happens to be garden fresh corn that was gifted to me by a friend of mine. Someone had given him a lot of corn and he said, here, take this. So I'm like, yes, I know exactly what I'm gonna do with this. This is gonna be skillet corn. Now, we eat corn boiled, we eat it roasted, we eat it, grilled, we love it creamed, we love it, all kinds of things. This is kind of a quick and easy creamed corn. If you don't have fresh corn, you can use frozen corn. It's fine. I'm using 3 ears, and I have a big bowl with the bowl turned upside down. The reason is it raises it up and makes it a little easier to do this. Now, the big bowl catches the corn, because if you do this on a board, it's gonna go everywhere. So I just like to cut down to the cob, and I want to make sure I get all those little corners because it has a lot of milk, corn milk in it. Okay, I'm going to do 3 ears. This one's a little dry on top, so I'm not going to get that. And again, if you don't have fresh corn, you can use frozen. You could use canned corn. I'm not a real big fan of canned corn, but if you like it, you could use that too. After this step, the procedure would be the same. Now, fresh corn, straight out of a garden, does not need a lot of time to cook. You don't need to boil it to death. I see a piece that got on my thing here. This really does make it a lot easier to raise that up and cut it into a bowl. Okay. Alrighty now. Get that up, put that in there, it kind of fell out. And then take your bowl out. And you've got some wonderful corn. If you are using frozen, you would want about, a cup and a half, 2 cups, somewhere in there. Think about the amount of people that you're feeding and allow like half a cup per person. I'm just gonna get this ready, get my stove eye on. When I come back, we're gonna get the corn going and we'll start on the rest of our vegetable feast. I'll be back in just a minute. Now our bread is baking. We have cut the kernels off of 3 ears of corn. I have here a good sized skillet that I've got some butter in. And I'm gonna add a little tiny bit of olive oil to that. Now I don't wanna, the butter adds a lot of flavor, which is what I want. But I also, need the higher cooking temperature of the oil. So if you combine them, it raises the temperature. Now I'm gonna add my corn. to my skillet. This is called skillet corn, after all. I love fresh corn on the cob. Love it. Absolutely love it. Oop. All right. Now, just let that go for a minute. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit of red pepper to mine because I have some left over. If you don't have any, you don't need to put it in there. But if you have it, by all means, put it in there because it really is very good. Okay, just dicing it. And remember with our peppers, we had green pepper, red pepper, whatever it is, I cut them from the inside because this side is a lot easier to cut through than the outside that has that natural kind of a wax skin on it, if you will. The thing that we peel off when we roast our peppers. All right. Just going to add those to my skillet. This just takes a minute or two. It really does not take that long. If you have a little Vidalia onion, you can dice that and put it in there. Okay. I just want to cook that corn for a couple of minutes. 3 or 4 minutes is plenty for our corn. We want to add a little salt. Let's add about a teaspoon or so. This is a half teaspoon measure, so I'll do 2. And then some freshly ground pepper. This is freshly ground. I just put it in a container. Not too much. I got so tickled last night. I had gone with Mike to sit down and discuss some business plans, and we were in a restaurant and we were leaving, and these people stopped us to speak to us, which was wonderful. And I got so tickled. I've never seen anybody else but this gentleman do it, other than me, do it. And he, you know, I love pepper, and if you've watched this show, you know that. He took, in the restaurants most of the time they don't have a fresh pepper mill, and he took the lid off of the shaker and poured his pepper over there. I got so tickled at that. I've never seen anybody else do that but me. I always do that. I'll take the lid off of the pepper and sprinkle on a lot of pepper because I really do like a lot of pepper. So we're just going to let this go for a minute. Now, this is good as is. I mean, really good as is. However, if you add just a little bit of heavy cream to your skillet and let it reduce and let it kind of simmer down, oh, it is so good. Let that liquid reduce down. It is absolutely divine with a little bit of heavy cream. It makes a sauce. The cream will reduce a little bit and kind of coat that corn. And it's yummy. And see, I think we need a little more pepper. So we're going to add a little bit more pepper. If your corn is not good, sweet, fresh corn, maybe you are using frozen corn or canned corn, you might possibly want to add like maybe a teaspoon of sugar to it to kind of sweeten up that corn. But this is fresh out of the garden, so I know it's going to be sweet. But if your corn isn't, or you're using, you know, maybe it's several days old, or you're using frozen or canned, you can add like a teaspoon or so of sugar, or even a little bit of Splenda or something like that, just to kind of bring out that sweetness that can be in the corn. But again, this is fresh, so it's going to be fine. I'm just going to let that simmer for just a minute while we get started on our next dish. Now, again, we're doing garden fresh veggies. So we're going to do a squash saute. I'm going to get this eye going. Let that, I've got some butter in there. And I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil just to bring up that temperature. Turn my corn down, let that simmer just a minute. If you are lucky enough to have a garden or know someone that has a garden, this is actually, this yellow squash is out of my sister's garden, and I purchased this at a farmer's market. Then you probably have so much squash that you just don't know what to do with it. I remember the days of gardening with my mom, And we would have so much, especially zucchini and yellow squash. We would have so much squash. A lot of times, once the zucchini got big, I would shred it. And this is a good little hint for you if you have a garden. You know, they go from this size to this overnight, seemingly. If you end up with the really big, gigantic baseball bat looking zucchini, you know, it's probably not the best to saute. It's a little bit, can be a little stringy or tough. But you can go ahead and shred it and press out excess water and pack it into airtight containers and freeze it. And then in the middle of winter, when you want to make zucchini bread, you've got wonderful zucchini ready to go. So that's a little hint for you. You can do that with your excess squash or zucchini squash or yellow squash for that matter. I make a lot of zucchini bread, so I like to have extra for that. Now I'm just going to get this butter melted. I'm going to start out with some scallions. If you have a Vidalia, by all means use the Vidalia. I'm only going to do the white up to the light green part. I'm going to use the green, but I'm not going to add it right now. I'm going to add that at the end. You could even add the tops of this to your corn if you wanted to. So I'm just going to set this to the side and add my onion into my pan. I'm going to let that go for about a minute or so, and then we will add in our squash. I'm going to take a quick break, just kind of clean up a little bit here, check the bread, and when I come back, we'll wrap up this program by sauteing our wonderful squash. All right, now our onions have sauteed. Our corn is done. I've got a yellow squash here. Now I'm going to take the bottom half, which is the fatter part, and I'm going to cut him in half and slice it into like half moons, adding it as I go into our butter and olive oil mixture. If you will take your fingers, curve your fingers back, and put your thumb on the end of whatever you're cutting, you can hold it steady, and it makes cutting a little easier and safer. Okay, that's just a little hint for you. Okay? And we'll do the very same thing with our neck of our squash. Let's just do one at a time. I always work on a big cutting board. My mother never used a cutting board, and I don't know how she cooked. I don't know how she chopped, but she did. But I can't do it without a cutting board. And I like a nice big cutting board to work on. If you buy a good cutting board and take care of it, it'll last you a lifetime. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with my zucchini. I love squash. You can make so many things out of it. Again, I use zucchini for zucchini bread, which we've made on the program before. I do a chocolate zucchini bread that is out of this world good. And you'd never know there's zucchini in it. It just adds a lot of moisture, as well as regular zucchini bread. You can do casseroles. I love to dice up zucchini and scramble my eggs. Well, I sauteed the zucchini with a little onion and a little bit of red pepper. Get that good and done, and then I will add some eggs to it and make scrambled eggs. It's really good. Okay, this just takes a minute. It really does not need a tremendous amount of time. We want to add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. Okay, we're just sauteing this around. I'm gonna use a spoon here. Mix it up, use what you like, and just kind of let that go. Now, if you have some shredded carrots, you could add some shredded carrots to this. You could add anything that you have out of your garden. Some snow peas, you could add some snow peas to it. You could add anything you have. If you've got some fresh, thin green beans, cut them in half and add to it. It's really good. This is just a quick and easy dish, an easy saute dish for your vegetable supper. Now, when warm weather hits, for me, I can make a meal off of just veggies. I don't need anything else. I'm gonna add in the tops of my onions. The reason I didn't add those in the beginning is because they cook really, really quick. I'm just gonna keep sauteing this until it's soft and tender. Okie dokie. Now, our squash has sauteed, our corn is done, our bread is done, and we're ready to eat. I have this other half of lemon, so I'm going to squeeze it over the zucchini. It just adds a little brightness to it. It's really good. If you don't have a lemon, don't worry about it. You don't absolutely have to do that. But a little bit of acidity, which the lemon provides, really does add a lot to it. Now, let's just plate up our meal here. We've got our wonderful skillet corn, which is delicious. We have our wonderful zucchini, yellow zucchini and squash. Now, one of my favorite summertime meals, or one of my favorite summertime things is fresh peaches, our fresh peaches. This is a Freestone peach. I just want to show you, if you don't know how to cut a peach, just take a good knife, cut around the pit, twist in opposite directions, and then slice that peach. It doesn't need anything else but to be eaten. One of my favorite, if not my most favorite summertime thing. Difference between peaches. This is a Freestone. I'll just pull that right out. Clean peaches, you can't do that. You have to just kind of cut around the pit. They're both delicious, but I do prefer Freestone, which is what this is. This is actually a South Carolina peach. Absolutely delicious. There you go. There's a wonderful dinner for you any day of the week. And don't forget our delicious bread, which has been in the oven and is warm. Now you want to just take a good serrated knife, it's hot, and cut that in half. That butter's melted. Those herbs have just kind of, let me show you. Inside, the butter's all melted. The herbs have just, totally gotten into that bread. And you've got a delicious, delicious bread for anything you want to serve it alongside. I'm just serving it alongside my southern vegetable plate, if you will. We've got a fruit and vegetable plate, actually. So we started out with our corn. Now, I used fresh corn. But if you don't have fresh corn on the cob, then you can use frozen or canned for that matter. The frozen, I like frozen a little better, but either one. And I added a little bit of diced red pepper because I had it. If you don't have any red pepper, you don't have to add it in there. I just cut the corn off the cob, sauteed it in a little bit of butter and olive oil, salt, pepper, and at the end I added just a little bit of cream, heavy cream. You could use half and half if you wanted, and just let that cream reduce, and it just coats, and you can see in the skillet, it just makes a delicious sauce. You can eat that without the heavy cream. It's delicious either way. Then I sauteed some garden zucchini and yellow squash. The yellow squash actually came out of my sister's garden with a little bit of scallion, green onion. If you don't have that and you have a Vidalia, even better, use a Vidalia onion or just a regular cooking onion. You just want that flavor. And I sauteed that in some butter and some olive oil lightly. I don't like my squash to be totally mushy. I still like it to have a little bit of texture. You know, both of those cook in about 10 minutes. I mean, it really couldn't be easier. I just sliced a delicious, juicy, drip down your chin Freestone peach, because that's my favorite. And I have a good crusty loaf of Italian bread that I mixed some butter with some Greek oregano and some other spices in there. Heated it in the oven for about 10 minutes. Sliced, there you go, a quick and easy summer vegetable plate. Thank you for joining with me. Try this and let me know what your favorite summer veggies are, and I'll see you next time on Everyday Manna.
Thank you for watching Everyday Manna with Lisa. This program is made possible by viewers like you. Your support is continually needed to keep Christian programming on the air.